another Bible study that we get to go into your word in depth, Lord, and to use all the skills and knowledge that we learn throughout the week to be able to apply it to our work in these scriptures. Help us to gain more understanding. Help us to dig out more treasures, Lord. Guide us with your Holy Spirit through this study and help our minds to be sharp. We thank you so much for everyone consistently joining and being here for this hour of study. We thank you, Lord, for how you've worked in each of our lives and putting an interest and love for these things in our heart. We pray all of these things in the Lord Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I had to point out something that I was thinking about during the break. Maybe we've all thought of this before, I don't know, but you've been pointing back to Leviticus 25. And my mind was kind of thinking about that with the 70 years that they went into captivity to Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
That 70 years represented each of the years that they did not rest during the 490 years. They did not rest the land. And the land did not keep Sabbath. So we know that there's 6,000 years until you come to that 7,000th year. The day is as 1,000 years, 1,000 years is as the day of the Lord. And so this whole the 1,000 years, I think we already all know this. It just kind of came to my mind a little more clearly. But the 1,000 years is the rest that the earth will keep Sabbath for all the time that it didn't keep Sabbath.
Yes, but the rest that the land was supposed to keep was for the poor and the slaves.
Right. Right.
So it all comes down to equality.
Yes. Yes. And everybody that will, this takes me always back to Hebrews chapter 3 and 4. Those that will enter into his rest, and that rest will be that equality. The rest of Leviticus 25 will be that rest.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm not going to go back and scroll through because I don't want to make anyone dizzy and nauseous. I'm just going to remind us of chapter 4, what we did last week. We went through a lot of pretty much that whole chapter. God is describing what his people are doing wrong, what their children are doing wrong. The whoredoms, a big one that it keeps talking about is the idolatry. In different forms, in different ways. And we also saw Ephraim and Judah come into the play. There was that one momentary section where it kind of gave a positive note, but then it went back into all the negative things that his children are doing. So now we're going to go into chapter 5 and see what this one is talking about. So verse 1, hear ye this, O priests, and hearken, ye house of Israel, and give ye ear, O house of the king. For judgment is toward you, because ye have been a snare on Mizpah, and a net spread upon Tabor. So it's definitely addressing every single class. You have the priest, the king, and the house, the whole house of Israel.
Church and state. What'd you say?
It's just addressing all the classes of people.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so you have three, you have priests, you have children, and you have the leadership.
Where do you have children?
House of Israel.
Why
is the people,
yeah.
Not children, people. And then you have the house of the king, that's the leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Does the king here represent state, though?
I know, but state and
I don't think that this is trying to show a story about church and state. I think it's just talking about all the inhabitants. But I don't know. And then Mizpah and Tabor, what's that?
what?
Mizpah and Tabor.
Mizpah. I know that David was made king in Mizpah.
Wait, am I sharing this? I am sharing this, aren't I?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. I have the wrong share though on, because if I'm gonna flip back to eSword, let me just open that up real quick.
Mizpah is watchtower.
Okay.
Wasn't that a promise between, I can't remember, was it Jacob? or Abraham?
Watchtower, yeah. That's the
Who,
meaning of
who made that promise? That was used as a promise. That it would always be between thee and me.
Jacob and Laban.
Jacob. There we go. Thank you, sister.
Yeah, the pile of stone. Covenant or whatever you call it.
What's orthographical? So it's the name of two places. What did you say, Elaine, that it was? A tower? A watchtower, okay.
What does ortho mean?
Bone?
What?
Bone. Doesn't it mean bone? Orthopedist, bone doctor, yeah.
Yeah, but you don't know the name like that.
Oh,
what
the
it means.
Hebrew. Oh, no, this is just giving a title. I'm sure this is a Latin-based word, orthographical.
So Mitzpah is in the Mount Gilead, because we're gonna have Gilead coming up later on.
If someone can Google orthographical.
The north of Mahanaim.
It doesn't pull up the chat. Someone just say what you put in the chat?
Orthography is a set of conventions for writing a language. It includes norms of spelling, hyphenation, capitalization, word breaks,
Like pen.
and punctuation.
Okay. So what's tabor?
Like as in calligraphy, you have orthography. Tabor. Mound, a mountain in the plain of, from the root corresponding to, let's see, broken region, a mountain in Palestine. Fragile, to be fragile or broken, to break.
So what were these in importance in the Bible though? Because they had meaning if they were used in this way. What meaning
so
did they have?
Tabor is the mountain where it was the battle of Barak.
Oh,
And then Mount Tabor is the site of transfiguration of Jesus. The army of Canaanite king of Hazor Jabin, commanded by
Wait.
Sisera.
so the Tabor is where the Battle of Barak was?
Yeah, and this Jabin actually is,
Jabin.
yeah, Sennacherib. It's gonna come in verse 13.
Yeah. So this is what's difficult because in these books that come later on, they address a whole lot of history that the Jews had lived and had in their conscience
Yeah, they knew in their history.
that we don't understand the same way that they do. And the way they refer back to it is a very vague way, but the way that outsiders won't understand, but the Jews would have. But it's hard for me to remember all these places and what they're important to us to them, because we have to know what it is, because it says ye have been a snare on Mizpah and a net spread upon. And they would have understood what that meant. So what would it have meant to them?
Well,
How do we even go about figuring that out?
The reference for Tabor is in Judges 4:12. So you'd have to go back to that battle that your mom was mentioning. They showed Sisera that Barak, the son of Abinoam, was gone up to Mount Tabor.
And the children of Israel again.
So that's where God saved them, isn't that?
Let me read it. And the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord when Ehud was dead, and the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, that reigned in Hazor, the captain of whose host was Sisera, which dwelt in Harosheth of the Gentiles. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, for he had 900 chariots of iron, and 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. And Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Leppidoth, she judged Israel at that time. And she dwelt under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and the Bethel in Mount Ephraim. And the children of Israel came up to her for judgment. And she sent and called Barak, the son of Abinoam, out of Kadesh Naphtali, and said unto him, Hath not the Lord God of Israel commanded, saying, Go and draw toward Mount Tabor, and take with thee 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali and of the children of Zebulun? And I will draw unto thee to the river Kishon Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him into thine hand. And Barak said unto her, If thou wilt go with me, then I will go. But if thou wilt not go with me, then I will not go. I remember Parminder going into that. And she said,
Jael and Deborah, the two women.
And she said, I will surely go with thee, notwithstanding the journey that thou takest shall not be for thine honor, for the Lord shall sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. And Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and he went up with 10,000 men at his feet, and Deborah went up with him. Now Heber the Kenite, which was of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, had served himself from the Kenites, and pitched his tent unto the plain of Zanaim, which is by Kadesh. And they showed Sisera that Barak the son of Abinoam was gone up to Mount Tabor. So there's Mount Tabor. And Sisera gathered together all his chariots, 900 chariots, even 900 chariots of iron, and all the people that were with him from Horsheth of the Gentiles unto the river of Kishon. And Deborah said unto Barak, Up to this is the day in which the Lord hath delivered Sisera into thine hand. Is not the Lord gone out before thee? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men after him. So why is Mount Tabor the thing they would refer to? And the Lord discomfited Sisera and all his chariots and all his host with the edge of the sword before Barak, so that Sisera lighted down off his chariot and fled away on his feet.
So see how it says here, ye have been a snare. So you have to find in the story of Mitzpah a snare and a net spread upon Tabor. So this story, does it tell you like?
You can't find a snare in that story. It's referring to something that had importance, and it's saying you did this to that situation.
Yeah.
You read a verse, I don't remember which one it was, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there, where it said, and I will draw. It's back towards the beginning.
Where are you?
Maybe it's a little bit further. I know you read it in one of these.
And
I was going to draw them to this place, and I was, to me, that could be possibly laying a snare. But we need to read the verse. But I don't remember which one.
This is Tabor. It wasn't a snare to Tabor. It was a snare to Mizpah.
Oh, wasn't one of them was a snare and one of them was
and
The
net.
net. Yeah. So there's a difference.
okay. And then spread. Well, actually, can't you compare and contrast snare and net? They're the same thing, because if you're going to set a snare, it's a trap.
Yes. Okay.
And the net also.
So they're both the same thing. So, but a different way of saying it. And that's why I wanted to find that verse. I think you read it. I don't think it was me, because I'm looking on my phone too, but I'm pretty sure you read it. In those, I will draw thee. That's where, let's look at that verse.
And I will draw unto thee to the river Kishon Sisera. So it says, I will draw Sisera to you. So you'll be a trap for him.
Yeah. So I think that might be related to the net or the trap.
Okay, but this
No.
situation, it's saying Israel has been a trap. they were the ones who were the negative thing to his own people. Or this mount, it's so abstract in my mind, just because I don't know how they understood their own history.
I think it's connected with the next verse.
And the revolters are profound to make slaughter, though I have been a rebuker of them all. But what did Israel do? You have the 10 northern tribes, and then you have Judah in the south. What did the 10 northern tribes do that they wanted to use the names of Mizpah and Tabor in there? We know that they basically led the whole people astray because they went wandering after idols, and you had the 2 calves put in place, and so everyone was given into idolatry because of all of that. So I understand why it would be a net, a snare, and a net spread upon, because they were pretty much trapped. They didn't get centers of worship like they had down in Judah. They just were given these idolatrous things. So, but why would it mention these in that context, Mizpah and Tabor?
Because there would have to be some sort of trap being laid in those stories, in those histories. But you're saying it's the reverse. I think you went through it so fast that I wasn't able to concentrate on it. You're saying it's reverse, so it doesn't make sense. Is that what you said?
No, it's not that. It's just saying, like, I don't know why there would be have to be a trap in those stories. I just think that it's just saying there aren't honorable people or something in those. I don't know. It's so weird that I'm trying to think of what we would do like this in our time. So I don't know.
Doesn't God sometimes put things in there like that, so we would come back and look at the other story just to draw more light, see if there's something in that story that we need to pull into it.
And you can.
Well, if Elaine's right, what I do remember that I do like is that you had Jael's tent. Do you guys remember? And
Yeah.
she set a trap for Sisera.
Exactly. And it was a woman.
Yeah.
She
And
covered him with what?
oh, I forget.
Thank you.
It was a
Wasn't it hides or something?
Yeah, could be a net if we go to the word.
yeah. She gave him milk with honey or something. What was it? What did she give him?
Milk.
Yeah. And then
she asked for water and she gave him milk instead.
yeah, to
Ma-
comfort him. So she did everything to pretend that she's comforting him, and then she drove a nail through his head.
That's the trap.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a trap here. And this is
Too bad Donna's not here because this is the topic of her presentation she's going to be ready for.
who?
Donna. She's going to do the story of Deborah and Jael.
Oh.
And she probably is, but she's not here.
So Mizpah then. But I'm wondering where in that story was Jael. Okay, so
There we
and
go.
to meet Sisera and said unto him, turn unto my Lord to fear. But where was, I guess it's just in the story of the situation. So we have that for a trap. But then what about Mizpah?
Mizpah goes all the way back to Genesis 31:49.
Hang on, that was Judges 4, Mom.
Judges 4.
But we're moving to Mizpah. What was that?
You can find Tabor also in the book of Joshua as well. Mizpah takes you back to Genesis 31:49.
Joshua what?
Oh, Joshua, I don't know, I switched pages. I can look it up again, but Genesis 31:49 is the first mention of Mizpah. I'll find the other one so you can write it down.
31.
It was Joshua 19.
Joshua 19.
Verse 22.
Verse 18, care spune că covered him with a mantle. Sure, if you look at the meaning of mantle.
And Jacob answered and said unto Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, peradventure thou wouldst take by force thy daughters. Whensoever, where's Mizpah in here?
House,
So I'm in Genesis 31, what verse?
49, I think it was. I'm trying to find it back up here again.
And Mizpah, for he said, the Lord watch between me and thee.
149, yeah.
And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Gilead and Mizpah. Right, so that said that in there, that Mizpah and Gilead are the same. So for, he said, the Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent one from another. Is this the,
There's a watch going on because I know that that word was related to watchtower. Mizpah was related to watchtower. The Lord set a watch. So he's defining Mizpah in verse 49. The Lord watch between me and thee.
It's interesting. It's near Mount Hermon.
Yeah.
Mount Hermon was Panium, right? Wasn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, I think
yeah, it was. That was Mount Hermon.
in the north.
So Laban was coming
because the
to
stolen,
kill, to kill and take the wives and the children and all that, because Jacob ran without telling him. But before
No.
that, during the night, God gave him a vision.
no, Rachel had taken an image, remember? And she
Yeah,
hid
but
it.
what he told Jacob, he said, I can do whatever I want because your wives are my daughters and your children are my children and all this. But that's where God saved Jacob. So you have the same theme in both situations. You have God saving his people. But now it says like the situation is turning against them.
So, oh, why? Ooh, I was about to write with the. So, let me do this.
Anybody else?
No, I'm not coming up with anything.
So, Mizpah. Also, I'm going to put Gilead.
Jaleed. It wasn't Gilead, it's different. Galeed, which is defined in the verse, but it's also a witness heap, and that's what he set it up for. Gilead was a witness,
Gilead.
and Mizpah, Gilead was a witness in the witness heap, and then Mizpah was the defined in the verse was the watch. So one's the witness, and if you back up in those verses, it was stones that they put together as a heap, and they were to be witnesses, and they ate on those stones. And so it was a watch and a witness. That was Mizpah. Well, Gilead is the witness, but
Gilead was a memorial too.
Yeah, that would be, yeah, the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, I just was thinking of the Sabbath being a memorial of God's creation. I don't know, that word memorial just seemed to jump out at me, but
It was stones that they gathered up and made a heap out of the stones that were the witness.
So the way I see this verse here, because ye have been a snare on Mizpah and a net spread upon Tabor. So if Jacob was like a snare to bring Laban in to be rebuked, and then Israel was spread upon Tabor, they were like a net that brought Sisera in, and he was killed. That's how I see it.
Well, if Mizpah is the watchtower, then they're a snare on those that are watching, right? And Tabor,
Well, the watchtower, the name was given after to say that we have a watch between us, so you don't come to me and I don't go to you. But what happened, Laban came with one mind, and when he left, because he was rebuked by God the night before. So he couldn't do any of the things that he proposed himself to do. Jacob was the winner, right?
yeah, in there, yeah. But this is Israel, all Israel, the priest, Israel, the king, judges on them.
Well, we have now Judah and Israel, but back then it was all Jacob, the children of Israel.
Yeah.
But in this story, it's Israel that's a snare on Mizpah, right?
Yeah.
And if Mizpah is the watch,
I don't think that in the original tent, they're looking at the word Mizpah as just thinking of its definition as in watch. I think they're thinking back to that story.
but that story shows it, defines it as being a watch. What am I missing? Maybe I'm missing something of what you guys are saying.
Look, verse 2 says, and the revolters are profound to make slaughter. So the revolters would be either Sisera and his army or Laban and his people. They want to make slaughter, though I have been a rebuker of them all.
But so then why is it saying, okay, let's look at that verse again. Hear ye this, O priests, and hearken, O you house of Israel, and give ye ear, O house of the king. For judgment is toward you, because you have been a snare on Mizpah and a net spread upon Tabor. It's a judgment because they did that.
Yeah. Jesus said about the priests and the Pharisees and Sadducees, he says, even though you are who you are, when you come to the judgment, the lower people will go ahead of you, because even though you knew all this, you don't do it. So even though you are the class that is God's people and he protected you, the judgment will be against you because you know all this.
I think I'm just struggling, and maybe it's just me, but I'm struggling with how you want to use the previous story as opposed to just using the first mention and what the words are back in the first mention, because in the first mention is where they're defined as a watch. So if Israel, the priests and all of Israel and the kings have been a snare on the watch and a trap when it comes to the witness, the truth, I think it's referring to the truth, but I don't know. I'm totally missing and not connecting at all what you guys are saying. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I'm not connecting it, but it's
It's connected to the previous chapter.
That's not what she's talking about, though. I understand what you're saying. I could be wrong too, but in my mind, if I have a previous history with someone and we have a situation and we have a couple things that we end up calling something in that situation, if I'm going to talk about it in the future, I'll use the name of that situation because it's easy instead of having to explain the whole situation. You know what I mean? But
Right.
it's not just that word that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the whole story. Because that one word isn't going to have the whole story of this happened, then Laban, then this, then
What we're
Jacob.
looking at is why they're getting judgment, why this judgment is coming upon them, right? And this judgment is coming upon them. And I don't know, like I said, it might be me too. I'm just not making the connection to the whole story. I'm making the connection, and I can be totally wrong, but I'm making the connection to what those things are defined as in that story. I'd have to go back and more carefully myself look at that is chapter 39, right, in Genesis, to see that story, because it's what they determined to do based on what had happened. I get that.
Yeah.
So they set a watch and they set up a heap of witness. Based
A
on
witness of what, though?
Huh?
A witness of what?
Well, if you go into the story, it's telling you that go back a few verses into the story, it's telling you that what they did was gathered stones and set them up in a pile in a heap.
Yeah, but a witness of what? What is it witnessing?
Wasn't it a covenant?
Right?
Wasn't it a covenant?
What's
Huh?
what's the covenant?
Well, then I think that, because I also think it goes then back to what it's a witness to. It's a witness to the truth. And then you have the watch that is set to hold and maintain the truth. But I don't know, I'm not connecting the story. It's not you guys, it's me.
But then the story, what was the covenant between Jacob and Laban in the story?
I got to go back myself and.
Right? Because that's what the witness was to.
That Jacob would not come back and hurt Laban, and Laban wouldn't go and hurt Jacob. That they would have a mutual relationship of helping each other without doing damage.
What chapter did I say? Oh, 46. I'm in 39, and it's like
I'm paraphrasing.
verse in my head. You took me to verse 49 there.
So a covenant of peace. Right?
A covenant of
Right.
peace.
That's the way I read it.
31:46.
Between Jacob and Laban. So it was a witness and a watcher over the covenant of peace. Does that make sense? Can we
Yeah,
use that?
that makes more sense to me when you look at it that way, because that's what they've messed up here in Hosea.
Right.
And the covenant of peace is, yes, there's a witness.
So here's something interesting. If you say you've been a snare on Mizpah, that means you used this pretense of a covenant of peace to destroy someone. Like, oh, there's peace between me and you, but on the backside, you're preparing to destroy that person. That would be a trap, a snare.
Yeah, it would be.
That's what the man of sin does too, makes away many by peace.
Mm-hmm.
So
But in this story,
they
who
would have
makes
broken
the
the
covenant?
covenant with God if they're doing that.
So it's Laban that says, is it right? Am I following that right? Laban that says, let's make a covenant?
I thought it was Jacob what I was reading earlier.
Looking at 43, it says, and I'm going to follow it through and just to see. And Laban answered and said unto Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? Now therefore, come thou, let us make a covenant, I think it's Laban, and thou, Jacob. and let it be for a witness between me and thee. And then Jacob is the one that takes a stone and set it up for a pillar. Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones and made an heap, and did eat thereupon. And Laban called it, I don't know how to say that word, Shadutha, but Jacob called it Galeed. Oh, here's probably a part of what we need to understand is because Laban called it one thing, and we need to see what it means, what Laban called it, but Jacob called it the heap of witness.
Same thing, means the same.
It does mean the same? They maybe spoke like a different language or something?
I don't know, different
Because
words.
Laban was Assyrian.
Yeah, it just means the same thing.
Okay.
But keep reading because it goes on in verse 49. It starts explaining more.
Okay, so then let's see. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Galeed. And Mizpah, for he said, the Lord watched between me and thee when we were absent from one another. And this is Laban speaking, right? Laban is saying that this heap, and Laban is saying, Mizpah, if thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives beside my daughters, no man is with us. So in other words, if I understand Jacob, if Jacob takes other wives, he breaks the covenant. Is that what he's saying? If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives beside my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt me and thee.
That's the way I read it.
And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and that thou shalt not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. This is Laban, I think, is speaking. You're not going to cross over. Neither one of them is going to cross over. So there's a covenant. You're right. There's a covenant that they're making.
Of peace.
So Israel broke that covenant because they went in whoredom.
Oh, my mom just said Israel but broke that covenant because they went into whoredom.
They crossed over they crossed over and took other wives.
Right.
Yeah. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us. And Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat bread, and they did eat bread, and tarried all night in the mount. And early in the morning Laban rose up and kissed his sons and his daughters, and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned unto his place.
Yeah, so they were not supposed to take other wives. Israel as a whole.
So in this case, with them taking other wives for Israel, that would be whoredoms and going into other religions and such.
Yeah.
Now you have the whole story of Hosea, where Gomer is a
Symbolic.
whore as it is, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And now we need to read about Tabor, maybe we understand.
So this Mizpah is alluding to a snare and a whoredom. So using false pretenses to snare and going into whoredom. So I'm going to just put that down as what we got from all of that.
And a broken covenant.
Yeah. Mizpah equals broken covenant. Snare. I'm going to put snare.
Broken marriage covenant, maybe.
I don't know. So we have, that doesn't look right. I can't even read that. Hold on. Using false pretense to destroy / going into whoredom. Okay, so that's all Mizpah. And now I'm going to move over and we can look at Tabor. And that was what we were talking about with Jael. Not net spread upon Tabor. Is that good enough then with Jael, the snare she set? Or was there more did you guys find?
I don't know. I just know that you could go back to, I gave you the reference, Joshua what? For the
I don't-
mention?
I was trying to find something. Oh, Joshua 19. Okay, cool. Joshua.
Just for the heck of it, yeah, 19, and then it's in, it's actually a cluster, however you want to call that, where you put a name in front of it, and then in verse 22, it's just by itself. So it's going to define it, and, but the story itself.
In Joshua or in
Yeah, that doesn't give what's happening there though. Where does it have it by itself?
I think it's 22.
No, 22 had a bunch of places.
I don't know what you're talking about. It just says, and the coast reacheth to Tabor. Is that what you're talking about? It just tells the places, yeah.
Yeah.
And it tells you it's a mound, yeah.
Where is it by itself?
Well, actually, what I was looking at is in verse 12, it's Chisloth Tabor. Verse 22, it's just Tabor. And 1934 is Asnoth Tabor.
In Judges, I think it's by itself.
In Judges, then again, it's by itself, which we had. And it's the same reference, anyways, to that's in Joshua as well. So,
It's 4:6, which is interesting.
46, yeah.
So the only solid story we have about Tabor then is that with Barak.
But look at the cause of this is because they did evil in the sight of the Lord and served Baalim.
Where are you talking about?
Jude
Okay, well you have to say where before you start saying.
2, 10, 11, 12.
And it has Tabor in there?
No, it's the reason why Sisera came.
In Jude?
Yeah,
Jude what?
2, 10, 11, 12.
Mercy unto you and peace and love be multiplied. Beloved, when I give diligence. Jude.
Judges, sorry.
Oh, I'm like, there's no way it's in the New Testament. What are you talking about? Sorry, guys. Judges 2, she says that it talks about why Sisera came in the first place.
Judges up higher. There you go.
They forsook the Lord and served
Chapter 2, she said?
Because they forsook the Lord and worshipped Ashtaroth.
and Baal and Ashtaroth.
Baal and Ashtaroth. So Sisera coming was from God or as a punishment or what?
Well, Sisera, isn't that Assyria? Or?
I don't know. He's Assyria. I thought he was a Kenite, wasn't he, or something? No. What was Sisera?
Kenite was Moses' father.
Oh yeah. So what was
Father-in-law.
Sisera?
And they were in peace with.
Where is Sisera in here?
If you read an E-sword, and by the way, Adriana, you made my mom laugh when you giggled. Your giggle was infectious. There you go. She just giggled again. It says that the Latin Christians, did you read that? Had an altar there at Tabor. The priests, at which their priests from Nazareth would perform mass. And that the Greeks also had a chapel there where they had certain festivals that they would assemble and have like religious celebrations.
Mm-hmm. That was way after this though, but that's interesting. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I know what it evolved into is what I was thinking, since we're reading about the broken covenant.
That's interesting because, like, how sin can start off really tiny but evolves into something bad. Just the thought of hurting somebody can turn into murder. The progression.
In the beginning of chapter 4, you don't need more.
Oh, hold on, because it says here. So Sisera was the spoiler.
Yeah, the review.
Yeah, it says, and they forsook the Lord and served Baal and Ashtaroth, and the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he delivered them into the hands of spoilers that spoiled them. And he sold them into the hands of their enemies round about, so that they could not any longer stand before their enemies. Whithersoever they went out, the hand of the Lord was against them for evil, as the Lord had said, and as the Lord had sworn unto them, and they were greatly distressed. Nevertheless, the Lord raised up judges which delivered them out of the hand of those that spoiled them. And yet they would not hearken unto their judges, but they went a whoring after other gods, and bowed themselves unto them. They turned quickly out of the way which their fathers walked in, obeying the commandments of the Lord, but they did not so. And when the Lord raised them up judges, then the Lord was with the judge, and delivered them out of the hand of the enemies all the days of the judge. For it repented the Lord, because their groanings by reason of them that oppressed them and vexed them. And it came to pass, when the judge was dead, that they returned and corrupted themselves more than their fathers, and following other gods to serve them, and to bow down unto them. They ceased not from their own doings, nor from their stubborn way. And the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel. And he said, because this people hath transgressed my covenant, which I commanded their fathers, not hungered. Where is it? You said, okay, this is going on and on. I'm going to go to chapter 4 because my mom said that.
Yeah, chapter 4, read chapter 4.
Okay, and the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord when Ehud was dead. And the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, that reigned in Hazor. So he was the king of Canaan. He was an Assyrian.
Yeah.
The captain of whose host was Sisera. So Sisera was just the captain of his host. So it was Jabin's brother, which dwelt in Harosheth of the Gentiles. So the Canaans came. Okay. The children of Israel cried unto the Lord, for he had 900 chariots. Okay, and we already went into that. So
Read about Deborah.
we already read that earlier, though.
But Deborah was a prophetess in the mount of Ephraim.
Yes.
And we read, because God is trapping Sisera at the river. He brings in Sisera. It's like a net, or whatever Hosea says.
What verse is that? Because there's
7.
7. Okay. And I will draw unto thee to the river Kishon Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him into thine hand. So what do you mean there was a net cast? There's no net.
But did you have a snare?
Yeah, that's what we said earlier about that, because it's a trap.
No, same thing.
It was a trap there, and then it was a trap with Jael.
Yeah.
So we have 2 traps. Because Sisera was trapped, but then Jabin was trapped in the tent. So let's say Sisera, I'm probably spelling that wrong, trapped by the river.
And Sisera was the one killed by Jael.
Was it Sisera? I thought it was Jabin.
No. Sisera.
That, hold on, and I will draw unto thee to the river Kishon Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, which is chariot and his multitude, and I will deliver him into thine hand. And Barak said, Hold on just a second. Yeah, it was Sisera. Okay, so it was Sisera trapped by the river. Okay, so it's an S. And then Sisera trapped in a tent. And we'll say at the battle of the Tabor area, because it goes between different things there. So I don't know. There's definitely, it takes you back to that story though. So Israel has been, that still confuses me.
What does it mean, discomfited?
To worry someone, to make them uncomfortable, like anxious, nervous. I'm pretty sure that's what discomfited means. Anyways, does anyone else have any ideas how this works? How is Israel a snare to Tabor? This saying is confusing to me still. Mizpah makes some sense, but Tabor doesn't.
Discomfit is to rout, to defeat, to scatter and fight, to cause, to flee, to vanquish.
Oh,
Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword.
okay.
Yeah,
There you go,
same
Mom.
thing happened to Sisera. But
So you have a scattering there, what you just read, right?
Uh-huh.
And there's a gathering with that other word, that big long word that means Gilead. That other word, you don't have it on your notes. I'm afraid I'll lose you if I click out to find it. The Z word. I think it starts with a Z.
What?
Oh. Oh, brother. What Elaine just read was like a scattering, right? Did I hear wrong?
Yep, no,
Yeah.
you're right. Scattering. To
And so,
root out, or it just says to root, to defeat, to scatter and fight, to cause, to
yeah.
flee, to vanquish.
And hold on a minute. I got to find the other word. It's that word. Oh, not the G, the one that's with the G. Gilead.
Gilead.
Yeah, that other word that Laban named it. The other language in Aramaic.
Oh, that's with
That
J.
word.
That's with the J.
That was,
Yeah.
it was
Okay, that word. Yeah. And it meant, when I was reading more about it, it had to do with a gathering, to gather. I don't know. I don't know if it's anything. I just heard her say scattering by that one.
Genesis 31, not 39.
Sorry.
That's okay. I had that problem too, multiple times. Oh, I got the Bible open on this same page. Jagar Shadutha. Jagar Sahadutha.
That's a hard one. That's a where
Which meant the heap of witness. Oh, it says Chaldee, so it must be the Chaldean language, I think is what it means.
what verse are you in?
Verse 47.
47.
This is hard.
So it means the heap of witness. Jacob's means the heap of witness in the Hebrew, and then Laban's is the heap of witness in the Chaldean language. Syrian, had to be, because he was a Syrian.
Word driven from an unused root meaning to gather, and a derivative of a root corresponding to that which is unused, not meaning to testify, witness, okay, heap of da-da-da. From a word derived from an unused root, Chaldee, yeah. Jagar Sahadutha. So it's like two words together or something. I don't know. So now we know. So what's the answer to our question here?
No, it's just an observation. I don't know if it's anything at all.
It was interesting to look at it. The fact that you have two different words there is interesting.
And the fact that what we were reading is what went to I lose track of what I've looked up because we move along so fast. But that word I know where I have it, because that word implies gathering in discomfort. That's why you brought that up. And discomfort refers to scatter.
Yeah, that's why. I wondered if that had something to do with it too, somehow.
And
I'm just not smart enough.
And discomfort came from Judges, right? I think that's where you're reading that from.
No, Genesis, you mean?
Where did you read discomfort at?
Oh, that's from Judges. Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom was asking about it. It was.
Okay.
So we'll say scattering from discomfort. Fitted. And then yeah, but mixing, hold on.
I don't know, where did I miss the link from discomfort to be Tabor?
No, my mom, that was not a link that was ever made. My mom was just wondering, what does that word mean? Because she didn't know.
Okay. So it's not even part of it. Okay.
Oh, I thought it was part of it too.
No, I thought, sorry.
That's okay. It shows that I will speak for myself, that I was looking at other things and not paying attention because I'm trying to look at Esort at the same time.
Her point was that that's what happened to Sisera at Tabor. Sisera was discomfited.
Discomfited, okay. Oh, well, okay. And that had multiple meanings. Scatter wouldn't be the one for that one then, because it says to root, to defeat, to scatter and fight, to cause, to flee, to vanquish.
Yeah, he was scattered. He fled. He ran from there, and he went.
So wait a second. Are you talking about what happened in the tent?
No,
Because he was killed in the tent.
Sisera was backed up to the river. He
Okay.
was there, and he lighted off his. I don't remember if he
Okay.
ran or whatever, because he was discomfited. He was, he fled. He fled to his friend's tent that he knew there was no bad stuff between him and Sisera, but it was only his wife Jael there, and so she knew Sisera something, it was bad, so she killed him. Whatever it was happening in her head at that time.
Okay.
But that's why he fled. So he fled, and / was scattered.
Okay. And then went into the tent.
Yeah.
What chapter is that from?
Judges 4.
Oh, 4. Okay. Thank you.
And I don't know how this fits in, but I know it always I know there's significance to it. It's not on the top of my head right now. But Jael was the wife of Heber. Heber was a Kenite, which was of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses. He severed himself from the Kenites.
What was Heber again?
Heber is a Kenite, the Kenite, but he severed himself from the Kenites, and he pitched his tent in the plain of whatever that is by Kadesh. So so they would have recognized him. Sisera would have recognized him as a friend, and it goes on through the story and talks about that. I think that Heber would have been Jael would have been recognized as a friend, not a foe.
So there's a history of Kenites and Canaanites being friends.
Because he had separated himself from the Kenites, and he was with and they showed Sisera the Barak. Let's see, I know as you go through here it shows it, but Heber had left the Kenites and would have been known as a friend to Sisera. So go ahead.
Canaanites and Kenites were enemies?
I'm not saying that right now. I don't remember who the Kenites were. I just know that the Kenites were, I don't remember. I'm sorry.
If you're saying that because he separated himself from the Kenites, then they would have been okay with each other, that implies that they would be at war with the Kenites and the Canaanites.
they were friendly. He left the Kenites, and they were friendly with Sisera.
So does it have to do anything with the being a Kenite or not, or?
Well, what I'm saying is Jael is the wife of Heber, and Sisera recognized them as a friend, not a foe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that was because they weren't Kenites?
Let's see. Keep going. I'm going to read a little bit. In verse 17, because it says, there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber, the Kenite. And this peace was because Heber had separated himself from his people.
Where is it?
Verse 17. Well, verse 11 is where he separated himself from his people. In verse 17, when Sisera fled away on foot, he went to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber, the Kenite, for there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber, the Kenite. So he would have seen him as friendly. Jael would have been seen as friendly. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that has anything to do with the Kenite thing.
No, I didn't necessarily mean it have to do with the Kenite thing, just that he was separated from his people and a part of Hazor, Jabin, the king of Hazor.
They were not.
So Sisera saw Jael as a friend, not a foe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of the peace between Jabin and his king.
Right. So I mean that kind of tells you about a trap, part of the trap.
Mm-hmm.
And then verse 18, it says, Jael went out to meet Sisera and said unto him, turn in, my lord. So she's calling him my lord, because they have acclimated themselves with Jabin, the king of Hazor.
But the actual trap, it was Israel by itself, because they were few in number and didn't have resources. They were on the Mount Tabor.
Can you guys hear that?
A little bit.
She said the trap itself was Israel because they were such a small number that I'm sure the enemy thought it would have been an easy kill, but because God was with them, it was a snare to them.
And they were on Mount Tabor. That's where Deborah told them to go.
And they were on Mount Tabor because that's where Deborah told them to go.
So there's this battle, and there's few in number. And
It looks like easy prey, but it's
Right.
not, because God is with them.
God is with them.
So that's the snare.
So there's multiple snares going on here.
Yeah.
But it just reminds them about the story when God Himself saved their life.
I heard this story from Parmender on this study,
Mm-hmm.
and the main thought to it is it's about Jael.
That's in the perspective of the rights thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but this is we're trying to figure out why it is that there's judgment on the priests, all Israel, and the king's house, because you have been a snare unto Mizpah and a net spread upon Tabor.
yeah. The main thought was that the woman took up she was the one that was the strong one, the woman.
That's the story of Jude.
The one that took drove the nail through Sisera, through his ear, wasn't it, or his temple?
Temple.
And so the whole thought of it was that the emphasis was on the woman and how strong she was. and that she obeyed God. So I don't know if that
We did
has,
actually, come to think of it, we skipped, because last week we ended off with either the last or the last two verses of chapter 4. I think we ended with Ephraim is joined to.
We ended for the whole thing because I looked back.
I thought we started it and then said that was I don't remember I thought we said, oh man, that was a really big one, or did we come to a quick answer?
Yeah, we came to a quick answer.
Okay.
So because it seemed complicated at first, but then my mom said, so the wind hath bound her up in her wings, and they shall be ashamed because of their sacrifice, take away captive and ashamed of their idolatry. Because
Well, isn't 5
made sense more at the time.
isn't 5 kind of being a repeat and enlarge of the previous chapter then? Because he's going to bring judgment on him, and that's what that judgment was, right? Is that?
But so is this talking about idolatry?
Well, you started to say something that was upon my mind earlier when you brought up all the idolatry.
That was just a review of chapter 4, I think.
No, it was after that, I think, because the mention, maybe it was the review, I don't remember, but it was the mention of the 2 golden calves that were set up. And I just,
Oh yeah.
interesting that you have Mizpah and Tabor, you have two locations there, and you also have the 2 calves, which were not put in these places, but those 2 calves were a snare.
Yeah, they were. And that's why I was trying to understand, like, what type of snare is this talking about? What kind of snare did you put on Mizpah? What kind of net did you, like, why? This is a really complicated verse.
But it's still talking about the story of idolatry, all their idolatry. And those 2 calves, this is the history of Israel, and Israel is the one that set up those, well, I might have that wrong, has set up those 2 calves.
Yeah, but that doesn't have my problem with that is that it's not referring back to stories that have to do with idolatry, and it's not referring to places that have those calves. So I don't know how you connect it back to that.
Because it's saying that they were a snare, same as the idolatry. They were practicing idolatry. That's if you were going to think of the theme, I don't know if that's the right way to say that, because the theme of what they've done throughout this book is idolatry.
Mm-hmm.
And Ephraim is joined to idols, let them alone. So this whole thing is talking about their idolatrous practices, and their idolatrous practices are a snare.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
And if it's a snare, then you go back to Mizpah. The idolatry is a snare, and you can go back where you're going to find what happened in those histories. I mean, do we always have to, I don't want to say that and make it sound wrong or bad, to have the story of where it's at, or do we just need the rule of first mention to get the definition of the word? I don't know. Because the whole theme of what is happening here is their idolatrous practices, and their idolatrous practices are a snare on people.
Yes, but because of the context of the verse, the way it's referring to those places, it's in a vague way, and it's referring to places that had a meaning to the people there.
So their idolatrous practices are a snare on the covenant of peace, and you spread a net over the witness. Which one was witness? The covenant of peace was Mizpah, right? The watchtower. So their idolatrous practices are a snare for the watchtower, and they're a snare for the witness.
Yeah, Galid was the witness, and Mizpah. Tabor was the mount.
Mound. Okay.
Another one, maybe we can go back and figure out.
Okay, my mom says let's move on to the next one and maybe we can see something that'll help us figure that out later. I think it'd be good to take a quick break. That way, if we can look at it back again, more fresh faced or something in a bit.
Oh, it never hurts to go a couple verses because you might find your answer there.
That's true. But she's read this a couple times and this confuses me even more. So, and the revolters are profound to make slaughter, though I have been a rebuker of them all. So now we want to know.
Okay, so who's the revolters? Are the revolters the priests, the Israel, and the king? Because they're the ones they're the ones that judgment is coming upon. So why is judgment to come upon? Because they're revolters. Are they the revolters?
Hang on. Maybe this is what it's talking about because it says, okay, and the revolters are profound to make slaughter, though I have been a rebuker of them all. I know Ephraim, and Israel is not hid from me. For now, O Ephraim, thou committest whoredom, and Israel is defiled.
Back to the previous chapter where Ephraim is joined to idols. Let him alone. Idols.
I want to see that word revolters because that's an interesting one. Where are you at? Where's Daniel? Oh, there. And revolters. I clicked on that. Okay. A departure from right, that is sin. Revolt. That turned aside. So people who turn aside from God depart. Sever, revolt, no, swerver, revolter, rebel, deeds that swerve. So it's just, revolters is just talking about people who turn away from God.
And that's what they were doing. They were worshiping idols.
Yeah, so it is talking about them then in this verse. It's the same thing because it mentions that. Whoredom in Israel is defiled. Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
you
that verse
follow that through to the next word, 7750. It says a primitive root to detrude. I don't know what detrude means. That is intrinsically, figuratively become derelict, wrongly practiced, namely idolatry.
Yeah. So we'll put.
They were revolters of the covenant of peace and revolters of the witness. But Tabor, I don't know Tabor. Mound, I don't know.
So these are, then if that's the case, then this is pretty straightforward. What I think is interesting is that they're profound to slaughter. Which, is that referring back to the snare?
Mound has to do with being broken or broken into pieces. Mound. Think about that when you got your plowing. Sorry, just thinking out loud. But Tabor, if you follow it through and its definitions, you're going to come to find that it's to be broken and broken up, crushed, shattered. I don't know.
Okay, so but profound to make slaughter, could that be referring back to the snares?
And the revolters are profound to make slaughter. Yeah, I think so. The revolters are doing this, and what they're doing, their idolatry is a snare, and it's slaughtering people. It's causing blood. Spiritual blood, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So you've been a slaughterer on Mizpah and on Tabor. So who are Mizpah and Tabor then that they're, I don't know.
Though I have been a rebuker of them all. So he's rebuked them, but they continued in their ways.
Yeah.
What does it mean profound?
Because you can find the theme of throughout many places in the Bible where the priests and the pastors and the leaders cause bloodshed.
Deep.
And the bloodshed is spiritual bloodshed. What'd you say?
My mom just wants to know what profound means. It means deep.
Yeah. So they're causing bloodshed, slaughter by their idolatrous worship. It's spiritual slaughter. It's not that they're physically killing one another. They're spiritually killing people.
Yep.
And as Solomon would say, there's no new thing under the sun.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting how when you go to Judges 2 and 3, it just keeps showing. Then God's people went a whoring. Then God sent them into the spoiler. Then God brought up a judge. Then the judge died. Then God's people went a whoring. Then God sent them into the spoiler. Then they cried. Then they got a judge. Then that judge died. And then they did the same thing. It's like over and over and over again.
Yeah, I always looked at it in my mind, saw it in my mind as a roller coaster, but each time the coaster goes a little higher and a little lower. So they get worse and worse and worse. I don't know if higher is not the right thing. They don't come back. They come back for a brief period of time and then they sink lower the next time. And then they come back up a little bit and then they sink even lower the next time.
Yeah.
And a spiritual slaughter seems even the most wicked of all in a way.
Yeah.
Because when you physically see blood, you know something's happening, right? It kind of puts you on alarm. You actually see people being killed. But a spiritual slaughter is kind of like what we were talking about in the Civil War study we were doing, where they're looking for a hot thing to happen and aren't recognizing what's really happening right before their eyes. So it's more deceptive and can actually take more people with it. More dangerous.
It's more dangerous because it's eternal.
Exactly.
Slaughter is eternal.
But everybody looks normal. They don't see they're being harmed.
It's not eternal because you can still come back for it as long as you're alive physically.
Yes, but that's what they're doing with their idolatry. They're leading people into, deceptively leading them into and slaughtering them spiritually. So yes, they can come back.
Yeah.
But how many do? Think about that. How many do? When they called them back out of Babylon, not very many came, right?
No, some always do, and that's why all the stories that.
Yeah, there's a remnant. Always a remnant.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine what it would be if you didn't have this spiritual slaughter going on, because the spiritual slaughter does eternally destroy many, and only a remnant come out over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else for these two verses that you guys see that's interesting?
Did we do 3 already too? No?
Yeah. We kind of did it in tandem because it's talking about it. It's a connection with. So this is pretty straightforward. It seems whoredom and Israel is defiled.
Yeah, because if Ephraim is the leaders, and Ephraim was foremost leading into idol worship, Ephraim was the leader, then Israel is defiled.
What'd you say? Foremost leading into
idolatry. That might be the wrong way she words it, but I think that's pretty close. Foremost in leading them into idolatry. So then Israel is defiled.
Yep.
Just like we're defiled, as Susan brought up, just like we're defiled from how Adventism went off course. Then they began to spiritually slaughter us. And you can see that in the book of Jeremiah and many of the books. You can see it that they were always spiritually slaughtering the people.
Well, because our judge died. Ellen White died.
Right.
And then boom, same thing.
But there in 1863, they did it before she died.
Yeah, true. So verse 4, they will not frame their doings to turn unto their God, for the spirit of whoredoms is in the midst of them, and they have not known the Lord. That seems pretty straightforward too.
Yeah.
So they won't change their action to turn unto their God. For the spirit of whoredom is in the midst of them, and they have not known the Lord.
And we went through that, I think, spirit of whoredoms before. But that's the spirit that exists among Israel. Ephraim was idolaters and spread the whole spirit of whoredoms and idolatry to everyone else. And so that's what they're all amidst, is just like we were here in our day in this whole spirit of whoredoms.
Well, the thing is
So
that
they didn't even know the Lord.
once there's one of them in the midst, it spreads to everyone else. So it's kind of like a virus.
Yeah, it's a plague virus, yeah.
Yeah, the spirit of whoredom.
A very contagious virus.
So, verse 5, and the pride of Israel doth testify to his face. Therefore shall Israel and Ephraim fall in their iniquity. Judah also shall fall with them. What's the pride of Israel?
I think that's that they wanted a king. Exaltation, majesty, pride. I think it was because they wanted a king. Wasn't that their pride?
My mom
I
says
was
it's
thinking
Ephraim.
Manasseh. Didn't that go back to Manasseh? Wasn't he the pride of? Oh, I don't
I
know.
think that might be where you get it from, because it still goes, I think it still goes back. What'd your mom say?
She's saying Ephraim. Why are you saying Ephraim?
They were the leadership.
Because they were the leadership? Put the options we have.
The rich and the leadership.
Ephraim.
Pride of Israel equals Ephraim.
Because she's saying because they were the rich ones and they were the leadership, but then it says, but the pride of Israel doth testify to his face. What is? How?
Testify
What?
to is the his God's face.
It's not God's face because that's lowercase his.
Pride
It's
of
talking about.
Israel does testify to his face. Well, who's the pride of Israel doth testify to his?
Is it kind of like your actions testify against you or something, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, you know what it makes me think? You know how you can be totally in the wrong and idolatrous, like SDA church, right? We think we're so perfect, but we're super bad, right? In the Seventh-day Church, but then they'll look at the pride of Ellen White and say, "Oh, but we have this prophet. Look how wonderful we are," and that's the pride of the SDA. But do they follow her writings? No, they testify against them,
Right.
isn't it?
So if you go back to verse 4, they will not frame their doings to turn unto the Lord their God. And the pride of Israel doth testify. Well, why doesn't it say against him to testify to his face? The pride of Israel doth testify to his face. Because their actions are their testimony. And their testimony is that they are committing whoredoms and leading everybody off astray.
Yeah, but the pride of Israel, that means it has to be the prophets and the writings of Moses, isn't it? Because they would hold that up like it's some idol, but it testifies against them. And it makes me think of the prophets, Jeremiah and all the ones that were alive, Hosea, all the ones that were alive at that time. They would tell them to their face, "Hey, what you're doing is wrong. I can show you this from the writings. They're testifying against you." I don't know. Maybe that's why it says to his face. I don't know. Real quick though, I was wondering this. I'm just going to put this idea out there. If you guys want to keep going on in Hosea, that's fine. We can do that. There's many chapters to it though. And to change things up, would you guys want to go next week or after we're done with chapter 5 to Esther just to change things up? If we want to come back to this, we can eventually, but We've been cracking down the same ravine for a while now. That's a weird saying.
I leave it up to everybody. Looking
I,
at, go
I
ahead.
think, yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I've been thinking about this myself, but Esther, if that's where the Lord leads us, everybody to go, then we shall go to Esther. But what I was thinking is, why not, as a group, take up Elder Parminder's challenge and go to 1 Corinthians 15 and see if we can study out the literal
Glory to
resurrection. Or the other challenge is go to the writing of Moses and see what laws or statutes were nailed to the cross and how we can apply that to Ellen White, and how what part of her writing may have been nailed to the cross. I mean, any one of those, I was thinking.
Yeah, all three of those ideas sound good.
And
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking,
The same thing.
I was kind of, we already suggested this morning, but maybe making our camp meetings more like a prophecy school.
Yeah, I like that.
I love that idea.
Like what we're doing here, we do this just wherever the Lord leads, and do our camp meetings more like a prophecy school.
Yeah, but if I could just say something on that, I don't think we have enough spots or time to do that, to come to any conclusions, because we have that limited amount of time that everyone is taking off work, and it's like an opportunity to get a lot of stuff in a small amount of time of information that everyone is working hard to try to accumulate to present. So I don't know, I feel like prophecy schools have to be longer for a reason, because you have to take things slow over a long period of time to actually come to any decent conclusion. It takes forever. I don't know. But that's just how it's up to you guys.
A lot of good suggestions. I was just looking at the titles over the next chapters in Hosea. An exhortation to repentance, the wickedness of the royal house, the tragic harvest. Yeah, so you know what? It's open to all. Maybe we just pray about it and decide next week together, or we decide now, before we're finished today, whatever you guys want to do. Whether it's Esther, 1 Corinthians 15. I'm up for either one of those. All of them, actually, I'm up for, but Esther or 1 Corinthians 15 for sure. And
Yeah.
the other one sounds too complicated for me, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be complicated for somebody else. And so if we're doing it as a group, then, the Lord will lead whatever he would have us to do. If it's things of
I like the idea of Esther and 1 Corinthians. I liked those two.
Yes, I do too. Either one.
So I don't know, but I think we'll just go a couple more verses because we're almost out of time, and I think we can just leave it for throughout the week. Everyone go in there, 1 Corinthians or Esther or wherever, and just kind of look around and see what you think, and then we can decide Bible study Friday night or Wednesday night or something.
Yeah.
First Corinthians 15, because it's just one chapter, și după aia Esther.
Oh, my mom says that we could always try to do 1 Corinthians 15 because it's just one chapter, and then go to Esther.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yes, don't underestimate that chapter. I tried reading it. I
was like, the chapter-
yesterday.
that
It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
Yeah.
Glory too.
All right. Well, we'll just, if someone wants to ask Wednesday night, see what you guys think. Just take a look over them and see what you think. But anyways, let's go back.
That's a long chapter too, by the way, 58 verses.
Yes,
Oh.
it is.
Mom. He just shrugged. She says it's better than the books of Moses. That's a month-long endeavor with 10 people all working full time.
Yeah, daily.
I feel like I would love that. That'd be, I like the idea of categorizing and organizing and listing. That's just right up my alley. I'd be down for that, but I don't know that it's, I don't know that it's for.
I'm not that organized.
I missed that last one. The books of what?
Moses.
Oh,
Brother Fell, tell her, because I can't remember how you said it better. Tell her.
So I believe it was Elder Parminder's presentation in 40, 46, 47. I think it's one of those two, where we're talking about the cross and what was nailed to the cross. What laws were nailed to the cross? And so what was nailed to the cross was parts of Moses' writing. Not all, because obviously like the health law, they still pertain to us. So that wasn't nailed to the cross. But for like stoning and things like that, that was, nailed to the cross. But there were some laws that were nailed to the cross and some that were not. So bring that to our time, what he was suggesting is that some of Ellen White's writing was also nailed to the cross. And so if we knew what was nailed to the cross, because what he was saying is you just can't pick and choose what you want nailed on the cross and what you don't want nailed on the cross. But if it's consistent and you can see what was nailed on the cross for Moses' writing, and you can compare that with Sister White's writing, then if it connects, then if that part of the Moses was nailed to the cross, then Ellen White's writing was nailed to the cross. So he was challenging us that that would be a good study for us to do.
that sounds big.
It sounded really big.
Well, just simply thinking about it, you could think right off the top of your head a few things that were nailed to the cross. That's pretty straightforward.
Sure.
But
then tying them to Sister White's writings, that's big.
Right.
it is, because some of them, like, think about it. Some of them was the temple services with the candles and the showbread, right? That's all out. Then you had the sacrifice. That's all out. You also had stoning out, violence, any kind of physical violence in general. Violence. Then you had circumcision. How do I spell that?
C is right.
Circumcision? C is? Okay.
Yeah.
Circumcision is out. But how would you tie this to Ellen White? Because that wouldn't make sense. We're not going to have baptism out.
Right. So yeah. So it is a complicated endeavor.
Include them in a certain category and then go by, but
Yeah, because this was covenant. This was how you did the covenant.
It
Covenant.
requires authority to say things like that.
Huh?
It requires authority to say things like that, so you can't.
What? We're not saying. We're just studying. Parminder said he put the challenge out to people. It's not like he's saying, no, this is reserved for me alone. I know it's a scary thing to endeavor to try to go to Ellen White and say, well, this is no longer required. Yeah, that's a scary.
Because I'm not sure. I'm getting all these. I've been watching so many videos at one time, and so my thoughts about all these videos are running back and forth, and I don't know which one I remember this. But he was talking about, I think in that same study, he was talking about there's a brother in there called his name is Aryan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's been studying this for 4 years.
Yeah. Val, what were you trying to get us into? Oh man. Well, he needs to share so we can get a head start.
Yeah. Watch if you have the time. I know you're way ahead of me, but if you have the time to go back, 46, 47, I think it's one of those two. It has to do with the curse of the cross or something like that.
Do you guys remember? I don't know if this was Walter Veith or Ivor Myers or who it was. I don't remember who it was, but they made the connection that there was, so you had the ark and you had two different laws,
Yeah,
and there was one of Moses on the side, and then there was the 10 Commandments here.
yeah.
So they were saying that it was this one that was nailed to the cross. That's
Not the whole thing. That's what Parminder said. Not the whole thing.
Yeah.
Not the whole thing, because
No.
part of that, like I said, the easy one is the dietary laws, and that definitely has not been nailed to the cross because it still pertains today.
Yeah, and there were laws explaining the law, the 10 Commandments, how to keep them, because supposedly you need interpretation.
Oh man, I don't know that.
Yeah, so that's the thing. What was part of that book, and I mean, we know the 10 Commandments, and probably the rest of the writings, all the other rules were part of the other book. But then you have to decide which one to keep, which one not to keep. Because if you don't stone people, if you don't look at dress and pants and stuff like that, then there's so many others. Why would you pick this one, not the other one? So
Yeah, that is interesting. And obviously, it's going to go to the whole reason why you have some weird ones that are called abomination and we don't care about them anymore, like the clothing in the fields and stuff like that. So
So in 1 Corinthians 15, it's broken into 3 sections. The certainty of the resurrection, the literal nature of the resurrection, and then the hope of the resurrection.
well, if we do like 2 verses in one study,
we'd be lucky.
who knows? We'll see. I mean,
I like that idea. I want to go to Corinthians. I like that, but everyone's got to vote on it because we're all going to be stuck in there having to use our brain. So we all are going to want to participate. So it has to be something everyone wants.
I'm okay with it, and then where the Lord leads, if He leads still to Esther, or if He gives us that daunting task to go back to the Book of Moses.
Yeah.
That's a study that would take, well, all of them would take, it all takes time, but like you were saying, to try to do it as a school, we don't have that kind of time to do a school every single, maybe.
If we end up losing all our jobs and we're all quarantined, then boy, we'll start a school forthwith. It'll be a Zoom school and we'll get it going immediately, but hopefully that doesn't all happen. But
Depends on who has the roof over their head. I don't know if I'd have a roof over my head if I lost my job.
it's not, well, the problem is that if they decide that they're gonna penalize people for not being able to pay their rent when they're losing their jobs, then they're gonna have a whole other big mess. That's why they've been looking into rent forgiveness and different things like that.
Right.
So they're gonna have to work that out because of how many people are on unemployment right now. I don't think their checks are gonna cover their expenses. So
yeah, eventually it's gonna come to that. I was thinking that, we do I don't know that I know I couldn't do this every night, but we could kind of try to set up more as a prophecy school as opposed to what we've been doing. I don't know what everybody thinks about that, but then nobody has to really prepare. We just do our normal studies, whatever direction we go during the week, whatever we're studying on, listening to the videos, doing our reading, doing, whatever topical study we might do or what have you. But then when we meet, we could do more like a prophecy school instead of any one person always having to prepare and present. I mean, presenting is good, but we also need to be like we're in a prophecy school.
Yeah, we could do that. I'm down for that. That's fine. It would just,
yeah, we still need to do both.
so we have 2 Bible study nights a week. We can take one and do that.
You know what? I tell you too, because, and I don't have the schedule in front of me right now, but I know that I'm pretty sure Tony's not going to be able to, I'm going to go back and look up here. I'm pretty sure that Tony's not going to be able to do her next presentations with the situation with her brother.
Okay.
And So we could at least fill in, and I do have the schedule here. It's going to be small. We could at least fill in where she was scheduled to do like a prophecy school study session.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. The next one is April 17th. That's next Friday, I believe. So she has a few on here. And then the next one is in May, a couple of them in May. So yeah, depending on what happens. And it'll be hers if she gets to come.
Yeah.
But if not, then we'll start working towards that.
Okay. So
the prophecy schools prepare you for the presentations.
Well, it makes your
Prepare you with the material and learn and grow to then go out and present in a more formalized fashion.
So then we would have to be looking on items that are going in the videos that are coming out
Yeah.
for the prophecy school, like the different quotes Parminder's been dealing with. So that'd be pretty easy to pull those Ellen White quotes up and try to figure them out.
On what, 1 Corinthians 15?
No, the ones that have been coming out right now in Portugal with the testimonies one.
Oh yeah, 90 and evangelism, and Tuthi, I think is one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Early writings, I think, was in there too. So it'd be interesting to do that. That is presently the truth that we are studying. So it would work.
Okay. So next week is 1 Corinthians 15. I think everybody seems to agree. Is that correct?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Okay. And then, how do you guys feel about, just a thought that's come to my head, just because this kind of study is really benefiting us. How do you feel about, do you want to continue to do Sabbath school the way we have been? Or do you want to maybe work Sabbath school that way as well? Does it matter?
I really like the idea of working together as a group. It kind of reminds me of the Millerites and how they got together, and when they got stuck on things, they prayed about it and they just worked on trying to understand.
Yeah.
I really like it.
I like that too.
Yeah.
We can eventually turn it into all day Sabbath being that way. I want to do the revolutions for sure, just because
Yes.
that's necessary review. Well, if everybody feels okay about it, I'll leave it to everybody else. But if kind of good review, because we are living in that period of time now, the preparation and then the counter revolution. And I don't know what it means date wise, but the revolution began around April, if I remember right. But I don't remember which revolution it was. I think it was the Russian Revolution. That the counter revolution began around April. They had that period of preparation. And it's just interesting. I think it coincides with some of what Governor Newsom is doing with wanting to make California its own nation. And we're going to act as ourselves, because the federal government was supposed to be over everybody. You got the president saying the states need to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
He's gonna regret those words. Man.
Interesting.
So,
Oregon's the same way. We're following Washington and California.
Oregon, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting to watch that because you watch them. Well, maybe you guys don't. I do watch some of the press conferences, but sometimes they really make me edgy to watch how rude he is to people and cut people off and not let them ask their question. Just says what he wants to say anyways. But to hear him talk as if the governor, he's been praising up Governor Newsom, how great he is and what a great job he's done and how well we're working together. And then what I read in that article, it's like, I don't remember how it was worded, that maybe somebody else read it and they could remember, but that this playing nice, it didn't say playing nice, but that's kind of along the way it was, because I think the governors have had to just try to be nice to him in order to get his cooperation. And those that are nice to him, because he always says, be nice to me. If you're nice to him, you get what you need. And so they're trying to maintain being nice because people's lives are at stake. And if they don't, then they're not going to get the things they need. And then here you have turnaround, and Governor Newsom is not going to play nice anymore, and he's going to separate himself off. Don't know what that means, but I think it might be related to the revolution.
Cuomo will follow him.
Yeah, I would think so.
There was an article in the Washington Post last night. I was reading it, and the governors are all getting together because they realize they're not getting the cooperation through the federal government, through Trump administration. So, and they are looking to solve some of these problems by their unity and their thought and how they're going to proceed with the testing, having the testing, and then the quarantine. And then the third one is you have to do a fact check on people, those that have been tested and have been connected, who turn out to be positive. Then you have to trace back the people they've been in contact with. This is their plan. And they're also requesting money from the federal government, for this third step, because it takes a lot of people trained to be able to find these contacts of just one individual, and then it leads to another one and another one. So they have to have a training for it.
Yeah,
It's really
it mentioned
interesting how they're looking to work together in their states according to the plan. Yeah.
it mentioned in that other article that is brought up the point that California brings in 15% of the revenue in the federal government. So if I understood correctly, then if they decide to be a nation state, then does that mean your taxes no longer go to the feds
Good question.
and all your taxes go here? So in other words, it'll dry up Washington if other states do that. So if this is the revolution, the thing that the lines teach is that the revolution loses. So that might be something to really try to focus on.
Yeah, what I see and how the losses could be, because the Post brought it out, is because of the unemployment rate right now, 6-point-something million people, which is, I think, about 15% of the nation with job loss. These people aren't paying taxes. And, the tax base is now being lost by every state. And our states are in real dire trouble now because we are not going to be able to survive, because the federal government subsidized with bonds, and the taxes is the money that pays for those bonds from each state. And if there's no tax money, no revenue from taxes, then how are they going to pay that? They can't, even if the federal government puts it out there, well, here, we'll help you, each state, we'll sell you some bonds here, you're going to have to pay it back though. Well, how are we going to pay it back?
Yeah.
So it's what they're saying is it's just a very, very serious crisis with states just completely collapsing.
Very much so. Apocalyptic. Prayerfully, the Levites and Nethinims we know they're paying attention. We know that the Lord is working on their hearts, whoever they are, the Levites and the Nethinims, that it is apocalyptic, and they're going to realize that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Other states talked about succeeding from the Union before, and
I think so. I think that's been brought up before, because that's pretty much what Newsom is talking about, right? He just didn't use those words in the article.
But it just doesn't work. It hasn't worked so far.
Yeah.
Got popularity.
Maybe they've never had a president like Donald Trump before either.
Good point.
Yeah.
Or it became an absolute necessity.
Right.
But we do know, though, line upon line, in the lines of the revolutions, that the revolution fails. So
Yeah.
But-
We're just spectators.
but having this information is preparing us to be able to help the Levites and then the Nethinims.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got people asking me, they're not religious. Is this the end? Is this the end? So some people are paying attention out there.
Yeah, they are. They're seeing it's apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
Another thing I was going to say, I don't know if here in United States, but I'm watching the news in Romania also. And there was a big article where it says the President of United States releases miracle cure for COVID-19.
oh, yeah.
We know what they are talking about,
Yeah.
but you know how Revelation 13 says that he doeth, what does it say?
Great wonders.
He makes miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. So it's like
Yeah.
takes you right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the magicians of Egypt, snake oil.
Yeah, he's miracle making now.
Well, the 1878 Quarantine Act took all the power away from the states to the federal government over quarantine now.
Oh, wow.
So they have control of everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in Romania, there is a big city close to my hometown. The army took over the hospital.
Because all the doctors and nurses ran away.
No,
Are on vacation.
the director of the hospital quit, and then another took over, and that one quit also. So then the army took over. It's, I mean, the highest number in the country on death of COVID
What? You have to finish that sentence.
in that city.
So I have another question
Yes.
in the light of COVID-19. Now I don't remember exactly, but it has to do with the Spanish flu of 1918. So there was I don't think it was a doctor. I think it was a nurse. It might have been a doctor, but I'm not sure. But I think it was a nurse. His last name is like Studesant. And right after he finished the school, that was right around the time of the Spanish flu. He was hired, and he and his assistant went to a college, and I don't remember the name of the college, but all the students were getting sick, and so he and his assistant did the hydrotherapy. I said, I don't know the number. I don't know how many were involved, but it was just he and his assistant were helping all the students who were infected and had a 100% success rate with hydrotherapy, 100% success rate. So then Oakwood College, now we know about Oakwood College, so hired him also and his assistant. And so he went over to the Oakwood College and did the same thing with all their 6 students and had a 100% cure rate of the Oakwood, those who were infected. And at last, he came down with it and his assistant came down with it. And the story is that, well, he got well, but his assistant died. And because there was nobody else to help them. And he couldn't help his assistant because he himself was sick, but he survived and his assistant did. So that was the only death in that story. And so I was wondering, now in this present time, we know that hydrotherapy can be a powerful treatment. So even anecdotally, has anybody heard that somebody using now in the present time hydrotherapy against COVID-19 and having some success with it? Has anybody heard?
I haven't heard. I just know that Sister Ellie, and I think I forwarded it out. She forwarded an email about a video about it. I think that's what is hydrotherapy and fomentation. Is that the same thing?
Yes, that's fermentation is part of hydrotherapy. There's many different modalities, many treatments,
Because
but fermentation,
it was
yeah,
talking about what was used in this during the Spanish flu and had
right,
positive results. Maybe that's what all you had just said. But yeah,
right. But I was wondering if anybody heard for this time, if anybody was using it. Was there any success rate for anybody using it? Has anybody heard?
no.
I have two questions.
No.
So, well, one is how would you use that for the virus? And number two, Kathy Brown was told by a physician, like a homeopathic therapist, doctor, or somebody, not to use fomentations on pneumonia.
That's contradictory to all the hydrotherapy treatments.
It says hot fomentation treats cold, flu symptoms, pneumonia.
Yeah,
That's
to
what
say
she
not
put,
to use it
yeah,
is
that's what she put in WhatsApp. I'm just.
Who did?
That's what Kathy Brown said, that somebody told her not to use fomentations.
Well, we'd have to
that.
know who that somebody is and what their experience is. I don't know how they.
Yeah, because
I'm
that's what it's used
I
for.
read it because it was in WhatsApp.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't trust that.
I wouldn't use steam in the face if you have pneumonia because you already have enough water in your lungs. You don't need any more water in your respiratory tract. But other than that,
Well, that's not the thing. The heat and the steam, it thins out the secretions.
does it?
Yeah, that's because they do aerosol treatment in the hospital.
Oh, is that what that does?
Mhm.
Oh, so then that is good to do. Okay.
Yeah.
So what this does, I have to tell you this because this is actually something I've been seeing online on Facebook. I'm an ultrasound tech and I'm in a group for ultrasound techs because sometimes they post interesting case studies. They're having ultrasound techs do DVT studies on all COVID-19 patients because they're having really big problems with clots and problems with circulation because of the lack of oxygen that comes in when you have pneumonia and all these problems. It causes problems with the blood vessels and with all kinds of other things. Obviously, it's a cascading effect. But I think it would at least help a little bit because it helps improve circulation. And the other thing they're having issues with is in COVID-19 patients, they're actually finding a low white blood cell count instead of an increased one. So this helps with the circulation, and which also helps with white blood cell circulation. So I think it wouldn't hurt if you get sick and you're still able to move. Obviously, try this because if it doesn't hurt, all it can do is either nothing or help.
Well, your mom probably has better answers to this, but I know I've seen some things on the CNN guy that's going through it and what his doctor had told him when it comes to, because this winds up settling in the lungs, and the thing to do was things that would prevent it. Certain exercises, certain movements, and I don't remember what they were, and certain breathing techniques to keep it from going into the lungs. And if you can keep it from going into the lungs, that's why a lot of them, I don't know if this is the only reason, but a lot of them die because it does make it to the lungs. And by then it's done so much damage. And I was watching a video, maybe some of you saw it, of what it does, because I don't know the terminology for it, but the layers or the walls of the lungs, that the oxygen, you breathe it in and it goes in, and then it goes to the walls of the lungs, and then the oxygen then goes through those walls, however it is it passes. Your mom might know this better than I do, but then goes into the bloodstream. So what the virus does is it builds up, when it gets into the lungs, builds up something, whatever it is, around in these walls that prevents the oxygen from getting into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
So let me tell you my ideas about hydrotherapy and things like that. This COVID is a very serious disease. I know that there's people that get healed from it, but there's people that die very fast. You have this 2-week period of incubation until you show symptoms. And as they say, by the time you show symptoms, you already build fibrosis in your lungs. What the name says, fibrosis, is like tough fiber in your lungs that will, your lungs cannot expand anymore. So you don't get the air in and you don't have enough space where the air can go in. So the hospital, if you, let's say, if you get COVID, you get so sick, you would not go to do hydrotherapy, even if there would be, I don't know how many centers, unless they prove 100% to be healing. You run to the hospital because you know you need antibiotics, you need intubation finally, you need all kinds of machines to help you breathe because it goes so fast.
But they don't let you go to the hospital unless you can't breathe.
Yeah,
And they,
no, once you go to the hospital with a temperature, they'll take you in. They do the test in ER 24 hours until the results are coming back, and they know if you have COVID, they move you to ICU. That's the protocol. The protocol right now. So hydrotherapy for a flu, it makes sense because a flu, even though it kills very weak people that have multiple organ failure or very little kids and stuff like that, of course, they always die. But COVID, you have young, healthy people dying of COVID. So you want to be in the hospital, get those antibiotics in.
but that's not, they told everyone on the news, if you have a cough and you have a temperature, stay home. The only people they're accepting are people who have shortness of breath. If you don't make it to that, but you still have symptoms of
No.
COVID, that's why we're saying, if you're at home, they're not letting you go to the hospital and you can still move to hydrotherapy.
You can do hydrotherapy. That's not bad. With the hydrotherapy, you have to have a sauna. You have to have good stuff. It's not like you go in the bathtub and you come out and all is hydrotherapy. So you have to know how to do that. One thing about hydrotherapy, you have to know your temperature. And you have to know how high you want to raise your temperature, because at a certain number, you can go in seizures and fry your brain. So that's the only thing with hydrotherapy that I would say. Last year or a few years ago, I had the flu, something like a flu. And, because of body ache and stuff like that, I said, I'm going to go in the tub. And from that, I got a really high temperature. From there on, I felt so sick. So you have to understand that stuff.
Though.
No, but it's hydrotherapy uses hot water. Is not only cold. You have
Yeah,
you
but
make
you have to
difference.
go between.
Yeah, difference and stuff like that. So I don't know. The hospitals do not have even a bathtub for the patients. They will never do this hydrotherapy. So you have to find a place which doesn't. With the government guidelines right now, I don't know who would take the responsibility to do stuff like that.
The hydrotherapy, that's the alternating between hot and cold, right?
Yeah, you don't stay long in one or the other. You have to
Yeah,
keep going
so
back and forth. I don't think you
It's
know.
I haven't heard about anybody doing it. The hospital doesn't do it. They will never do. They never did. So
Well, I'm not suggesting that hospitals are doing it or we go to the hospital to get hydrotherapy treatment. What I'm suggesting is that's the reason I want to find out if anybody heard that somebody's using it now, even at home and even just anecdotally, and if there's any success to it, because this is like Sister Adriana said, that, you have a cough, you have a fever, you stay home until you get this, until you have difficulty breathing.
Yeah.
And then then you go. So while you're at the house, if we know how to appropriately, because hydrotherapy is not just about getting in a bathtub. There's hot and cold contrast. There's the cold mitt rub. There is fomentation. There's the foot bath, and there's all different ways. There's the combination of foot bath and fomentation. So there's all different ways of performing correctly hydrotherapy. And so if you knew how to do it, Or let's say, you have a neighbor, and let's say you knew how to do hydrotherapy, and you have a neighbor who can't get to the hospital for whatever reason. I mean, we know it's only going to get more and more worse as time goes on. This is not going to get better, and we're going to be in a more difficult time. So if we knew some simple, as we spread the gospel, as we truly do spread the gospel with the medical missionary work, if we don't know hydrotherapy or anything simple modalities, how are we even going to do medical missionary? So I think this is something that we ourselves need to be educated on.
Yeah, because Christ healed their sickness first, and that opened the way to heal their sin-sick soul.
Yes.
Um,
So that's all I'm suggesting is we ourselves need to know some simple therapies so that we can treat them while we're spreading the gospel.
If I cannot go to the hospital and I have to stay home, believe me, I will try everything.
Yeah.
Right.
You are not staying home and just waiting for what?
Right. But what I'm saying is that hydrotherapy is a technique in itself. It's not just.
Yeah, my father used hydrotherapy when we were kids. If one of us got the flu, the whole house was sick. And in Romania, you couldn't call the school and say, my child is sick, he cannot come to school. There was no such a thing. You had to be present. So, our feet in the water. We had all kinds of massages with whatever oils and stuff like that. Especially my father would make garlic sauce and massage us, wrap us in towels, then our feet in hot water, take a bath, drink some tea, and then tomorrow morning everything was fine. We were going to school.
Yes, and it works great. There's other modalities like charcoal. Charcoal itself is a great modality to heal, whether you drink it internally or use it as a poultice externally. So, but do we know how to use charcoal? And this is what I'm asking is just I think we ourselves need to know how to perform some of these simple modalities. So when we do have the opportunity to use them in conjunction with spreading of the everlasting gospel, that we can be of help.
Okay, Brother Phil.
Teach us.
Homework.
Now,
learn how to do it.
I saw in the schedule, the prophecy school schedule. I think that's what it was. I saw Sister Allie's name on there in October that she's going to give a class. Is that? Am I right?
Yeah, she is doing something in. You want to ask her? You want me to ask her? Do you want to ask? Do you want me to ask her to maybe do?
Well, is she on now? Is she listening?
She's not here now. No.
No. Yeah, because it didn't say where. It didn't really give the time. It just gave her
May 22nd and 23rd.
Oh, it's in May. I thought it was in October.
Oh, are you talking about for our meeting?
Well, I don't know. I say it was just schedule of. Yeah, no. It's not our meeting. She was actually giving a class on hydrotherapy.
Oh, okay. Oh, she might be going. She's gone to France a few times and done health presentations in France. Maybe she's doing something in Canada.
Okay. It didn't say where, or just say it in October.
Brother Phil, why don't you go back and look at those videos? Because Sister Ellie already did that, but she showed them. She even had like the people in the crowd. She brought them up, put them in a bucket with their feet and all this stuff.
She did. You can find them on the French YouTube channel.
Okay, thank you.
LGC channel. She's done them a couple of years in a row. And last year they were all sick, she said. I put two links in here. It kind of merged them both together. So I didn't mean to do that. But one is the New York Times article, 2005 on Obama, called Grounding a Pandemic. And yes, Sister Marioni, the French, she did them in France. She went to France like 2 years in a row, I think. And then the next one is the YouTube video of Obama in 2013. I want to say 13. No, it wasn't 13. Can't remember what year it was. Might have been 13. I can't remember what year it was. But him talking about giving the warning and why we needed to. Yeah, I think it was 2013. Why we needed to have a structure in place for pandemics, and talks about how it wasn't about if it ever happens, it was about when it happens, and that we had to have, and the US needed to, I think it was in the article where he says the US needed to lead the nation or the world, which I thought, because if it's going to be a global world and people can travel from here to there in a day, then these things can travel from here to there. And that we needed to, the US needed to lead out in this cause, which is interesting because one of the things that Donald Trump gripes about when it comes to the World Health Organization is that we give all that money and nobody else gives as much money as we give, and we get no benefit from it, and they're all cozying up to China. Now, I don't know if any of that is true or not. It's not about that, but it's like the US was trying to lead out, is what I think we're seeing in that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the US was trying to lead out in that. And then we know in 2018, where he pretty much abolished that department and said, we don't need it. There's hundreds of whatever millions or whatever it was of dollars being paid out for things that we don't need, and we can always get them back in a hurry if we need to. And those are things that he said about dismantling that division in the, was it Homeland Security? Is that where they put that division? And so he demolished that that whole structure, and then now he goes up there and calls it all faulty. We have a faulty structure. We had a faulty structure, and Obama built a faulty structure, and it's his fault. So, anyways, those are the article in the video. So, somebody want to close in prayer? Brother Francisco, maybe?
Okay.
Yeah, I can do that. We thank you, Holy Father, for your Sabbath day you've given us. We pray that we have honored that, Lord. And we thank you and praise you on your holy day. As we leave this group and go on to our homes and wherever we need to go, we ask that you continue to be with us. And we thank you for this congregation that you've put together. Please be with us throughout the day. Be with those that couldn't be here today, and also those that are under the weather. We pray for everybody concerned. We pray for our families, our co-workers, our friends. And we pray in your holy and mighty name. In the name of Yeshua, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you.